He opened the house app to prove himself right. 11 hires before her had burned through references, bent rules, or simply quit when the nights got long. So when the live feed blinked on and the wheelchair sat off to the side, forgotten. His chest went tight. Then the frame widened. His twin boys, the sons every report called permanently paralyzed, were upright on their bare feet, swaying, laughing, reaching for the nanny's clapping hands. Harlan Voss forgot to breathe. The phone slid against his palm, and the man who had made peace with never watched it fracture in the glow of his own screen. 18 months earlier, Harlan lost the version of life he understood. One rain/turn, one crumpled guardrail, one ambulance that couldn't outrun time. His wife survived. The twins did too. But Cale and Thorne came home different. Soft legs that didn't answer, muscles that curled and stilled, reports thick with words that sounded like doors closing. The neurologist didn't flinch. Based on imaging and response, voluntary standing is highly improbable. Prepare for a wheelchair-centered future. Harlan nodded because nodding was easier than breaking. Days blurred into schedules, specialists, equipment deliveries, sterile routines that made his mansion sound like a hospital wing. He buried his heart in spreadsheets and hired help to love for him. Zara Kingsley arrived in a pressed black and white uniform that felt like order made human. She spoke softly, moved quickly, and ignored the cameras she couldn't see. Harlan told himself the hidden lens above the living room was about safety. Truth? It was about control. This morning, the feed bloomed to life, and his reasons fell apart. The wheelchair lurked like a shadow near the wall. On the floor, Zara knelt, grinning, clapping a rhythm that pulled sound out of the boys like sunlight pulls color. Cale tipped forward, then caught himself. Thorne bounced on his heels, his laugh breaking into hiccups. Not therapy, not protocol, something louder, something alive. Harlan's back found the paneled wall of his study. The house around him, usually tomb quiet, vibrated with a noise he hadn't heard in months. His sons, unafraid. He had installed a camera to catch a mistake. Instead, he was watching his own. Stories like this remind us how life can surprise us in the most emotional ways. If you're feeling that pull, subscribe and join our community of story lovers who share their own experiences in the comments below. He built the house to keep the world out, but grief did most of the work for him. Harlan Voss owned towers of glass downtown, chains of hotels across 3 continents, an island he hadn't stepped on in years. None of it felt as large or as empty as the mansion on the hill. Hallways that once echoed with toddler shrieks and off-key lullabies now held their breath. Staff moved like ghosts, soft-souled, quiet, trained to disappear the moment he entered a room. Doors stayed shut, curtains stayed drawn, light came in through screens. His office was the vault at the center of it all. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, a desk the size of a car, monitors lined in a precise grid. On one screen, markets flickered. On another, news rolled by without sound. The only feed he watched with volume off and heart on was the one labeled Living Room East. A pristine shot of polished floors, white walls, and the corner where the wheelchair waited like a permanent fixture of the decor. That chair had arrived 18 months ago, after sirens and surgical lights and forms he signed without reading. One storm, one shriek of metal, one sideways skid on a wet mountain road, and the world he knew folded in on itself. His wife survived the crash, but not the complications that came after. The twins, Cale and Thorne, woke into a life their bodies refused to obey. Legs that wouldn't bear weight, muscles that hung limp or spasmed without warning. Neurologists lined up to be polite and final in the same breath. Highly unlikely, minimal voluntary movement. You should prepare for long-term dependence, Mr. Voss. He prepared the only way he understood. He wrote checks, specialists, therapists, adaptive equipment, renovations to the East Wing. The nursery became a medical suite overnight. The laughter went first, then the music. He stopped opening doors with his hands and started opening cameras with his thumb. Zara Kingsley was supposed to be another line item. Her resume was careful and clean, references unshakable. She arrived in a crisp black dress and white apron that looked like it belonged in another century, not in the sleek, automated home of a tech billionaire. Harlan liked that about her uniform. It suggested rules and distance. Professional, not a friend. Someone who would perform tasks, not ask questions. For a month, the feed reassured him. Zara rolled the twins from room to room on a strict schedule. Feeding at 9, exercises at 10, educational videos humming in the background at 11. Her movements were efficient, almost clinical. She adjusted straps, checked vitals, logged notes on a tablet. Kale and Thorne lay angled in their chairs, eyes drifting, hands curled around soft toys they barely seemed to feel. No sudden jolts, no risks, no surprises. He told himself this was safety. They were fragile. Hope, he had decided, was reckless. On this particular morning, he tapped the app the way other men checked the weather. The living room filled his screen. The chair was there where it always was. The boys were not. The decision to install the extra camera came the same way most of Harlan's decisions came now. Quietly, 2 in the morning. With the house so still he could hear the compressor in the refrigerator cycle on and off. The security company had already wired the grounds with more technology than some airports, but those cameras were obvious. Red LEDs blinking like tiny warnings. This one needed to be different. Not for intruders. For the people he'd invited in. He told himself it was rational. 11 caregivers in 18 months. Each one leaving a sour aftertaste. One had fallen asleep on the job. Another had borrowed jewelry that somehow never returned. 2 lasted less than a week before they admitted they weren't comfortable with the medical equipment. Each failure landed on the twins' shoulders. Missed doses, sloppy transfers, new bruises no one could explain without saying, under their breath, "They're so hard to handle." So when the technician arrived with a slim black box and a polite smile, Harlan signed the paperwork without looking up. The device was the size of a matchbook dressed as a smoke detector. It would sit high in the corner of the living room, its single glass eye angled down toward the wheelchair and the play area. Audio and video, motion activated, streaming straight to Harlan's phone and office monitors. Discreet, the technician promised. Good, Harlan said. The word tasted like control. Zara didn't know about this one. She knew about the obvious cameras in the hallways, the ones every employee signed off on. She'd nodded, unfazed, when he'd mentioned them in her orientation, smoothing the crisp white apron over her skirt as if to press out invisible wrinkles. That uniform had been the first thing he noticed at the interview. A black dress cut to the knee, short sleeves, a white collar and apron straight out of an old photograph. It should have looked theatrical, like a costume. On her, it looked like discipline. Most of the other applicants had arrived in leggings and sneakers, chewing gum, using his first name too quickly. Zara called him Mr. Voss and sat with her back straight, hands folded, the picture of composure. There was a softness in her eyes when she spoke about children, but it never spilled over into familiarity. He hired her before she finished her second cup of coffee. The first days of footage matched his expectations. On his office monitor, the timestamp glowed in the corner as Zara wheeled the twins into frame. She lifted them with practiced care, fingers always braced at the right places, checking straps twice. She measured medication, logged their intake, adjusted pillows under slack legs. Her voice reached the microphone as a low, even murmur. Nursery rhymes, counting, simple questions that didn't demand answers. Kale and Thorne watched her with the detached curiosity of children who had seen too many faces come and go. They smiled sometimes, faint and fleeting, like reflexes. More often they stared past her, eyes tracking some middle distance only they could see. She kept the TV volume low, cartoons flickering without much response. No rough handling, no obvious neglect, no reason on paper to worry. Yet each night, Harlan found himself scrubbing back through the recordings, frame by frame, searching. Not for a crime he could name, but for proof that his unease was wrong. All he ever saw was competence, professional distance, a woman in an old-fashioned uniform moving carefully around his sons, like a nurse around priceless but fragile artifacts. Proper care, he told himself as the footage looped in the dark of his office. That's all they need. Proper care. Connection, whatever that had once meant, stayed on the other side of the screen. The first time he saw it, he almost blamed the software. Harlan had scrubbed through hours of footage already, the way another man might flip channels. The living room appeared in stutters. Morning light, afternoon shadows, evening lamps, Zara pushing the wheelchair in, Zara pushing it out. The twins' days were a loop he could recite without looking. So when the feed jumped and the angle shifted slightly, he frowned and checked the log. No lost connection, no glitch, just different. The timestamp read 7:01 p.m. The boys' official schedule said bedtime prep started at 7 sharp. On screen, the overhead lights were dimmer than usual, the curtains half drawn. The chair stood empty, parked near the wall. Cale and Thorne were on a blanket on the floor, propped against a pile of cushions that hadn't been there earlier. Zara sat cross-legged in front of them, a book open in her lap, her uniform skirt fanned neatly around her like a black and white flower. Her back was to the camera, but her voice carried clearly. Not the low, utilitarian murmur he'd grown used to, but something brighter, threaded with rhythm. "Okay, gentlemen," she said. "Where were we?" Yes, the part where the hero decides he's not broken. He's just waiting." She snapped the book shut, then sprang to her feet with a theatrical gasp that made Thorne's shoulders jerk in surprise. The book became a sword in her hand. She paced in front of them, acting out dialogue that definitely wasn't printed on the pages. Her arms carved shapes in the air. She made ridiculous faces, puffing out her cheeks, crossing her eyes. She leaped sideways to avoid an invisible dragon, landing with a little stomp that sent a ripple through the blanket. Cale laughed. Not the thin, automatic sound Harlan had heard when nurses tickled his feet to test reflexes, but a small, round laugh that seemed to surprise the boy himself. His mouth opened wider, eyes brightening. Thorne's lips parted around a sound that wasn't quite a word but wasn't a whimper either. Something expectant lived there. "See that?" Zara said softly, dropping to her knees so she was level with them. "That's what bravery looks like. You know what brave boys do? They make plans, not excuses." She tapped Cale's knee, not with clinical caution but with gentle insistence. "You're going to build robots that climb mountains. And you," she turned to Thorne, "are going to race them. Might take you a while. So what? We've got time." Harlan checked the schedule again. This was supposed to be quiet time. Low stimuli, minimal movement. She should have been reading from the approved list of calming stories the therapist had emailed, not spinning fantasies about racing robots. Yet the room, through the tiny lens, felt more alive than it had in months. He leaned closer to the monitor. It was subtle, almost nothing. The set to Cale's jaw. The way Thorne's eyes tracked Zara's movements instead of drifting. Their fingers, usually curled inward, were splayed a little wider on the blanket. Micro-expressions, the neurologist would have called them. Insignificant. Zara lowered her voice. "They tell you what you can't do, don't they? Doctors, reports, even your dad sometimes." She hesitated, then shook her head as if pushing away a thought. "Forget them for a second. Tell me what you want to do." The boys couldn't answer, but their faces shifted. Tiny muscles waking up under skin he'd long ago filed under damaged. Cale's brows knit in concentration. Thorne's mouth curved into a shy, lopsided half-smile. The camera's motion indicator blinked in the corner, registering activity. Harlan's heart did something similar. This wasn't on any care plan. It wasn't in any contract. It was extra, unnecessary, dangerous. A part of him whispered. He forced himself to rewind, watching again from the moment Zara closed the book. The same improvised story, the same exaggerated gestures, the same spark in his son's eyes. He told himself he was looking for a breach in protocol, a reason to call her in to remind her of the rules. But as the scene played for the third time, what he kept finding over and over wasn't a violation. It was the smallest hint of something he hadn't budgeted for. The wall between them, hairline cracked, letting in a sliver of light. It started as background noise, something Harlan meant to glance at between emails. The notification pinged on his phone. Living room, east. Motion detected. He tapped the alert without thinking, expecting the usual. Zara adjusting a blanket. A nurse bringing in supplies. The quiet choreography of maintenance. The feed opened to chaos. Not the messy, dangerous kind his mind immediately supplied. Spilled medication, a fall, a stranger in the room, but something louder and stranger. The wheelchair sat abandoned near the wall, its straps hanging loose. On the floor in front of it, Zara knelt, arms outstretched, her black and white uniform flaring as she clapped in a rapid rhythm. Cale and Thorne were not in the chair. They were in front of her, upright. At first, he thought they were being held up by harnesses he couldn't see, some new piece of equipment he hadn't approved. Then Cale's knees wobbled and he pitched forward, bare feet slapping against the floor as he caught himself on Zara's hands. The sound, skin on wood, quick and desperate, went straight through Harlan. "Come on, Cale," she laughed, breathless. That's it, you've got more in you. Show your brother how it's done." Thorne shrieked in delight, actually bouncing, his legs making short, stamping motions that looked alarmingly like steps. His arms pinwheeled for balance. Zara shifted, bracing him with one hand while reaching back for Cale with the other, her movements fluid, improvised, nothing like the careful, counted lifts from the therapy sessions. This wasn't on any chart. There was no metronome ticking, no therapist counting repetitions in a calm, detached voice, no padded parallel bars, no safety belts. Just a woman in a starched uniform on her knees, laughing so hard her words came out in gasps, and two boys who had never been expected to stand trying to run toward her. The twins were loud. Not the thin whimpers he knew from hospital nights, but full-bodied sounds that rattled the microphone. Wild laughter, high-pitched squeals, the ragged edges of effort. Cale's face was flushed, cheeks bright with exertion, eyes locked on Zara as though the world began and ended at her open arms. Thorne threw his head back and howled with glee when his foot managed a clumsy push that moved him an inch closer. "Zara, stop," Harlan whispered to no one, fingers tightening around the phone. The doctor's phrases pounded through his mind. Minimal stimulation, limited exertion, watch for signs of fatigue. This was the opposite of all of it. This was every warning translated into motion and then ignored. On the screen, Zara's grin widened. "You are not glass," she told them, voice fierce. "You are not broken. One more. Just one more. I'm right here." Cale's legs trembled visibly, little muscles firing in uneven bursts. Thorne's breath came in sharp, delighted pants. They should have been exhausted, shutting down. Instead, they leaned into the effort, chasing her hands, their bodies listing and correcting in tiny, miraculous ways. The room looked different too, he realized. Sunlight flooded the floor, blinds pulled all the way up. Their framed family photos on the back wall, long ignored as decor, now sat squarely in the camera's frame. Smiling versions of himself and the boys, a life that had existed only in possibility. The current scene overlapped it in real time, a shaky, living echo. Harlan's heart hammered so hard he could hear it in his ears. His rational mind cataloged risks. A fall, a fracture, a seizure triggered by overstimulation, lawsuits, liability, loss. But some other part of him, smaller and long buried, fixated on something else entirely. The look on his sons' faces, that raw, unfiltered joy. It was almost violent, the way it broke across their features, erasing the slackness he'd grown used to, like their happiness might shatter them from the inside out. The camera adjusted focus as Cale lurched forward again, Zara catching him under the arms and spinning him, both of them laughing now, the sound spilling through Harlan's office like an intrusion. He should have hit the intercom. He should have called the nurse, called Zara, called someone. Instead, he watched, stunned and motionless, as the woman he paid to keep things safe and small blew past every boundary he'd constructed. And his sons, who weren't supposed to want more, reached for it with everything they had. The camera autofocus kicked in, a soft mechanical whir that nudged the image closer. Harlan didn't breathe as the frame tightened around his sons. This wasn't the wide, safe shot he was used to. Now he could see everything. The flush along Cale's neck, the damp curl of hair stuck to Thorne's forehead, the tremor running like a current through both of their legs. Zara shifted back on her heels, giving them an extra inch of space. "My brave boys," she said, voice low but electric. "Reach for me." Cale's right hand, usually curled against his chest, unfolded finger by finger. It was clumsy, the motion jagged, but it was voluntary. He stretched toward her, his arm shaking so hard Harlan expected it to buckle. Thorne watched his brother, then tried to mimic the movement, his own hand jerking outward in short, staccato bursts. Their faces twisted not just with glee now, but with concentration, effort carving new lines around their eyes and mouths. Their knees wobbled, tiny muscles in their thighs clenched and released in uneven rhythm, trying to remember a sequence they had never really learned. Cale's foot slid forward half an inch, toes digging into the floor for purchase. Thorne's heel lifted, ankle quivering, as if the weight of his own body were something enormous he was daring to challenge. That was what did it. Not the laughter, not Zara's open arms. The work, the exertion hit Harlan like a physical blow. Every warning speech, every cautionary pamphlet, every grim diagram of fragile bones and spastic muscles lit up in his memory. Strain equals risk, the neurologist had said. Overexertion can trigger regression. His brain translated the tremors he saw into fractures, the gasping breaths into impending collapse. "What are you doing?" he rasped at the screen, as if Zara could hear him. Cale's face contorted, teeth gritted, a tiny warrior fighting gravity. Thorne let out a frustrated sound when his leg refused to move the way he wanted. Then tried again, harder. They weren't being carried. They weren't being positioned. They were pushing, against their limits, against everything he'd been told was fixed. His thumb hovered over the security app's emergency button. One press would bring the guards, the nurse, half the staff if he wanted. Another button could dial 911 automatically. Police, ambulance, fire, all available with a tap. He imagined responders pouring into the house. Zara pulled away. The boys scooped up and strapped down, sedated back into stillness. On the feed, Zara clapped once, sharp as a starter pistol. "Yes, that's it, Cale. I see that foot. Thorne, don't you dare give up on me now." Cale's leg jerked forward again, more than before. Thorne's heel finally left the floor, his toes bearing weight for a heartbeat too long. Both boys gasped, mouths open, eyes wide. Not in pain, Harlan realized with disorienting clarity, but in shock at their own bodies. They were discovering effort, tasting it, leaning into it like it was a game. He misread their ragged breathing as distress, and his own chest tightened in sympathy. This is wrong. This is too much. This is how you break them. The thought flashed so fast it felt like an instinct. His finger shook over the emergency icon. The camera's focus ticked closer again, as if the lens itself were fascinated. Every tremor was visible now, every microstrain of muscle under soft skin. It should have looked monstrous to him, dangerous. Instead, against his will, the sight rooted him to his chair. Because beneath the tremors, beneath the raw, forbidden effort, he saw something he had not planned for, had not allowed. His son's choosing to try. Harlan swallowed hard, the urge to call for help battling something wordless and old in his chest. For a suspended second, he did nothing at all. As Harlan grapples with this game-changing moment, the tension is just building. Subscribe now so you never miss these twists that challenge everything we think we know about limits and love. For a few seconds, the only sound in Harlan's office was his own pulse, thick in his ears. Then another noise slipped in around the edges. The ghost of laughter, muffled by walls and distance. Took him a moment to realize it wasn't coming from the phone. The feed itself was muted. The sound was real, leaking through the house like sunlight through blinds he'd meant to keep closed. He turned the volume up anyway, out of habit, and watched his son strain toward Zara in high-definition silence while, faintly, the same scene played in stereo down the hall. The dissonance made his skin crawl. Screens were supposed to give him control, not confuse him. His eyes drifted from the boy's shaking legs, from Zara's open hands, to the edge of the frame and stopped. The wheelchair sat there, just inside the camera's view, shoved at an angle as if it had been moved in a hurry. One armrest bumped the wall, leaving a small, dark scuff on the pristine paint. The footrests were swung to the side, dangling uselessly. No one looked at it. No one touched it. In a room that had revolved around that chair for more than a year, it had become background, a forgotten prop. He felt that detail like a betrayal. Every adaptation, every renovation, every thick medical file stacked neatly in his study had been built around that object. The chair was the axis of their existence now. It was what the doctors had meant when they said wheelchair-centered future, what the therapists carefully normalized with terms like mobility device. Harlan had signed invoices that cost more than most people's homes to make sure it was the safest, smartest, most advanced one money could buy. And there it was, pushed aside. On the screen, Zara leaned forward, clapping an encouraging rhythm. Cale's foot scraped ahead again. Thorne's fingers flexed against the air. They occupied the space where the chair should have been, the center of the room suddenly a place for bodies instead of equipment. The laughter from the living room rose, clearer now. Someone had opened a door, hers, maybe, when she'd carried them out of their routine. It bled under his own doorframe in waves, bright and jarring, cutting through the constant hum of the air system and the quiet tick of the antique clock on his wall. His office, once a sealed vault, didn't feel airtight anymore. He stared at the empty chair until it blurred. That hollow seat, those idle straps, were supposed to be proof of his love, his preparedness, his acceptance of reality. Instead, they looked, in that moment, like an accusation, as if the object he'd clung to as a symbol of safety had simply been rolled out of the way so life could happen. Another peal of laughter. Cale's this time, he thought, a higher pitch, burst through the corridor, followed by Zara's deeper, answering shout of praise. The sound hit something soft and half-healed in his chest, something that recoiled and reached for it simultaneously. Harlan tightened his grip on the phone until his knuckles went white. He could end it. He could walk down the hall, swing the living room door open, and restore the order he understood. Strap them back into the chair. Remind Zara of the care plan. Put the wheelchair back at the center where it belonged. On the screen, Thorne wobbled dangerously, then righted himself with a wild little flail, eyes blazing. The chair watched from the corner, empty and irrelevant. The wall he'd built between his office and that room, between his fear and their lives, felt thinner than the wood of the door. Through it, the joyful noise kept coming, refusing to be muted. The decision came without words. One moment Harlan sat in his leather chair, the phone burning his palm, the empty wheelchair staring from the corner of the screen. The next, the chair scraped back and he was on his feet, laptop sliding off his desk and snapping shut against the floor. The sound made him flinch, but it also broke whatever spell the screens had on him. The laughter in the hallway was clearer now, a bright river running straight toward him. He crossed the office in 3 long strides and yanked the door open. Cool air from the corridor hit his face. For a heartbeat, he just stood there, fingers tight around the knob, every instinct screaming to retreat, to return to the safe distance of surveillance. Instead, he moved. His footsteps echoed off marble and wood as he walked, then half ran, down the hallway toward the east wing. The house felt unfamiliar at this speed, like a place he'd only ever visited in photographs. As he neared the living room, the sounds sharpened. Zara's voice, high with laughter, a delighted squeal that could only be Thorn, a breathless, hiccuping chuckle he recognized as Kale's. He grabbed the living room handle and hesitated for a single, bracing second. Then he pushed the door wide. The scene hit him in color and heat. Sunlight poured in through the tall windows, turning dust motes into gold. The wheelchair sat off to the side exactly as it had on the feed, abandoned and irrelevant. In the center of the room, on the honey-colored floor, Zara knelt, arms wide, cheeks flushed. Her uniform looked different in person. Less costume, more armor. And her whole face was lit up with something fierce and tender. Kale and Thorn were in front of her. Not sitting, not lying down, standing. For a long moment, no one moved. Zara stayed crouched between the twins, one steady hand hovering near Kale's ribs, the other braced behind Thorn in case he tipped. The boys stared at Harlan, chests heaving, cheeks flushed the exact shade they used to get when he tossed them in the air as babies. A bead of sweat slid down Thorn's temple and caught in the corner of his grin. Harlan's question hung in the air, raw and jagged. "What are you doing to my sons?" Zara's gaze flicked to him, taking in his white-knuckled grip on the doorframe, the way his shoulders shook. She didn't look guilty. She didn't look afraid. She simply straightened, rising from her knees with unhurried grace, one hand still resting lightly on Kale's shoulder. "I'm just playing with them, Mr. Voss," she said. Her voice was soft but utterly sure. "That's all. Playing?" The word scraped out, half laugh, half accusation. He gestured toward the twins, toward their trembling legs. "They're not supposed to. They can't. They're not supposed to try?" she asked gently. "Or they're not supposed to enjoy it?" He opened his mouth and nothing came out. Zara smoothed her apron with her free hand, then stepped slightly to the side so he had an unobstructed view of the boys. Kale swayed, caught himself, eyes never leaving his father's face. Thorn made a tiny, impatient noise when Zara moved away, as if annoyed that the game had paused. "They've been told all the things they can't do," Zara continued. "By doctors, therapists, charts, probably by you too without meaning to. I just changed the script." She nodded toward the abandoned wheelchair. "That's not who they are, Mr. Voss. It's a tool. Useful, sure, but not their name." His gaze followed hers to the chair, then back to his sons. They looked impossibly small and impossibly huge at the same time. Fragile bodies containing more will than he'd allowed himself to imagine. "You're risking them," he whispered, but even to his own ears the protest sounded thin. "I'm respecting them," Zara said. "Kids know when you've decided they're broken. They feel it every time you flinch at their effort." She smiled down at the twins, and the smile softened everything about her face. "I treat them like boys who have a future, who need to know what joy feels like in their own skin, not just from screens and stories." Joy. The word hit him harder than any medical term ever had. "They could fall," he said, because fear was the only language he trusted. "They might," she agreed easily. "Then we'll help them up. That's part of learning, too." Her eyes met his, unwavering. "But right now, they're not falling. They're standing. They're laughing. They're choosing to reach." Would you really rather they sit safe and silent so you don't have to watch them struggle? Cale made a small sound, his name, maybe, or just a syllable that reached for him. Thorn's fingers opened and closed in the air, as if beckoning. Harlan felt something give way in his chest, a pressure he hadn't known how to name until it started to crack. All this time, his voice broke. He swallowed hard. I thought I was protecting them. Zara's expression softened. I know, she said. Grief tells you that if you keep everything still, nothing else can be taken. But they're not grieving the way you are. They're waiting for permission to be alive. The floor seemed to tilt under his feet. His legs, so steady when he walked away from hospital beds and into boardrooms, suddenly felt unreliable. Without quite deciding to, he let go of the doorframe and dropped to his knees. The impact jarred up through his spine, but he barely felt it. He crawled forward, the polished wood cool under his palms, until he was close enough to see every freckle on Cale's nose, every damp eyelash clumped together on Thorn's cheeks. Up close, the boys smelled like sweat and milk and something indefinably bright. Their laughter faltered, confused by this new development, then rushed back when he reached out with shaking arms. I'm here, he managed, voice hoarse. I'm here, I'm here. He gathered them in as carefully as he could, one arm around each small body. Cale sagged against his chest, still quivering from the effort, his tiny hands clutching at Harlan's shirt. Thorn let out a delighted squeal and buried his face in Harlan's neck, his legs giving up the fight at last and folding beneath him. The three of them collapsed together onto the floor in an awkward, tangled heap. Harlan held on as if they were the ones keeping him from falling. Hot tears spilled onto Cale's hair, onto Thorn's shoulder, into the space between their hearts. I'm so sorry, he whispered over and over, not sure which of them he was apologizing to. His sons, his wife, himself. I should have been here. I should have seen you. Zara knelt nearby, close enough to catch them if they slipped, but far enough to give them the moment. Her eyes were bright, but she didn't wipe them. She just watched, hands folded loosely in her lap, the faintest smile on her lips. They're stronger than you think, she said quietly. So are you. Harlan pressed his face into his son's hair and finally stopped trying to hold everything in place. The paralysis he'd wrapped around his own heart began to loosen, not with a dramatic snap, but with a slow, undeniable thaw. In his arms, Cale and Thorn shuddered with leftover giggles, their bodies warm and heavy and impossibly alive. In the days that followed, the house changed faster than its owner knew how to keep up. The first thing to go were the cameras. Harlan walked the security tech through every room, every hallway, pointing them out one by one. The man kept asking if he was sure. Harlan kept nodding. The discreet lens in the living room came down last. He held the small, plastic shell in his hand for a moment, thumb brushing the glass that had once been his only way of seeing his sons. Then he dropped it into the box with the others and closed the lid. I'll keep the exterior system, he told the tech. Outside threats only. Inside, he had other work to do. The medical coordinator was the first staff member he let go. Then the night nurse who spent more time on her phone than with the boys. Then the therapist who had frowned when Zara mentioned the standing game. He didn't slam doors or raise his voice. He simply sat them down, one at a time, and said, "Thank you. We're going in a different direction now." Rumors rippled through the staff. Some left on their own. The ones who stayed learned quickly that the mansion was no longer a mausoleum. Music returned, soft at first, then louder, drifting from speakers and from Zara's clear voice as she sang while she worked. Doors stayed open. Curtains were drawn back each morning, filling the corridors with light that had forgotten how to enter. Harlan's office changed too. One monitor vanished, then another, until only his work screen remained. The feed labeled Living Room East disappeared from the grid like it had never existed. In its place, propped beside his keyboard, sat a framed photo Zara had snapped on her phone and printed. Kale and Thorn on a picnic blanket in the garden, leaning against their father's sides, all three of them laughing at something just out of frame. He had no idea what the joke had been. He'd been too busy laughing to notice. One afternoon, he found Zara in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, flour on her cheek as she helped the twins press cookie cutters into dough from their booster seats. "How long are you planning to stay, Miss Kingsley?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. She looked up, eyes searching his. "Until you don't need me anymore," she said. Then, after a beat, "If you'll have me." "I'm hoping that's a very long time," he replied, and he meant it in a way that had nothing to do with employment contracts. Later, when the cookies had cooled and crumbs dusted the boys' overalls, he gathered Kale and Thorn on the living room rug. The wheelchair waited nearby, not as a centerpiece now, but as one tool among many, used when needed, ignored when it wasn't. He took a breath. "I need to tell you both something," he said, even though he knew they might not understand every word yet. "I watched you through a screen because I was afraid. I won't do that again. If I want to see you, I'll come here. To you." Kale's hand patted his knee, clumsy but deliberate. Thorn leaned into his side with a contented sigh. Zara sat cross-legged opposite them, watching with a smile that held no trace of "I told you so," only quiet satisfaction. Evenings settled into a new rhythm. Games on the floor, messy dinners at the big table, bath time that ended with puddles on the tiles and exhausted. Happy boys falling asleep on his chest instead of in separate rooms monitored by machines. Some nights their legs would spasm and they would cry, and he would be there for that too, rubbing circles on their backs until the tension eased. Joy didn't erase the hard parts. It just finally shared space with them. Months passed. The twins' efforts grew from tremors to controlled steps with support, then to awkward, triumphant shuffles between the couch and Zara's waiting hands. Every centimeter gained felt like stealing fire from a god that had once told him no. One crisp morning, they stood together on the patio. Harlan, Zara, Kale, and Thorn, faces tipped toward the sun. The boys clutched their father's fingers on one side and Zara's on the other, legs wobbling, laughter spilling out every time a breeze tugged at their hair. Someone snapped a picture from the doorway. He never found out who. The image would end up framed on the living room wall, beside the old photos from before the accident, not as an attempt to replace them, but as proof that after